G'day everyone, welcome to the Bothy. I'm Chris. Al will be back soon. There's some changes to the Support at Home scheme from 1 November 2025. Thought I'd touch on those today and just have a look at maybe why it's happening. So some background here. Both major parties in Australia leaned on more health benefits for all Australians at the recent federal election. It formed a large part of their election campaigns, and they promised more benefits on prescription medicine and changes to bulk billing benefits for all Australians. But dig a little deeper, and there were some other changes afoot too, particularly on the Labor side, and now that they're in power, those changes are taking effect. So overseas, we've seen some enormous protests recently. In France, their government announced austerity plans and budget cuts to assist getting a grip on the spiralling debt facing that country of almost 3 trillion euros.
France came to a standstill on Thursday as anger over the government's austerity plan spilled into the streets. Hundreds of thousands joined marches across the country, bringing metros, schools, and pharmacies to a halt. Unions staged more than 260 demonstrations nationwide. Police deployed in massive numbers, clashing with protesters in Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. Many accused President Emmanuel Macron of enriching the wealthy while squeezing ordinary people.
These cuts included removing 2 public holidays, a halt to increases in the pensions, and removal of tax cuts, as well as freeze on government spending so as not to spend more in 2026 than they did in 2025.
Trade unions are uniting against planned cuts to wages, pensions and public services. Hundreds of thousands march against poverty, inequality and the struggles of low-paid workers.
They also announced a solidarity contribution where wealthiest citizens would participate in driving down the national debt and contribute to the national effort. There was also a €5.3 billion cut to local authorities and a €5 billion cut to the healthcare budget. There were proposed changes to social benefit schemes, changes to unemployment insurance, and a plan to increase the country's production. Now, the French love a protest, and protest they did with up to 1 million people marching across the country. Nice saw a fair bit of the more radical protesting, and Nice does remind me in that way a lot of Melbourne. I was in Nice a few years ago and arrived just in time for a protest. That was a LGBTQ plus protest through the promenade of Nice, and my goodness, were they up and about. It reminded me a lot of Victoria. The Prime Minister of France then lost a vote of confidence and was removed from office. Now it's back to the drawing board for yet another Prime Minister who's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Here in Australia, changes are made more by stealth than by public announcement with an overriding plan announced. The Australian Support at Home scheme is changing. Clinical care, including nursing, will continue to be covered, and all care already in place will continue to be protected and provided. When I say that, that is for clinical care and any other care that they receive at home. So if you've already got care in place, no problem. However, if you're applying after 1 November, and you need home care that is regarded as non-clinical, you will now have to pay a fee, regardless of whether you're a self-funded retiree or on a full pension. Everyone has to pay. The amount will be determined by your income and your assets. This fee will come in at between 5 and 50% of the service provider's fee for what is referred to as independence tasks. So these are personal care tasks that are items like showering, hygiene, as well as assistance with mobility and getting medication. For tasks described as everyday living, such as cleaning, cooking, laundry, people will be now charged between 17.5% and 80% of the service provider's fees. Now, most providers charge $95 to $100 per hour, which in itself, people, is a rort. What house cleaner charges $95 an hour? Just shows you how ineffective and expensive government programs are. This has been gotten away with because it's the government that is being charged. So will these rates become more competitive now that pensioners are footing a portion of the bill? Will people now be employed more directly rather than through the government to fulfill this need? Will they become cleaners and carers? at a rate that's more acceptable of maybe $35, $40, $45. Problem with that is then you have to pay 100% of the bill. So some pensioners will end up paying around $50 per hour for assistance with hygiene and around $75 per hour for domestic help such as cleaning, laundry and cooking. We understand that showering is not clinical care, but it is essential. Surely the government can see that. So this is yet another attack on the lowest income sector of our society. We ask how that is fair or equitable. It has the potential to deliver people into residential or hospital care earlier than they might have had to. That impacts on people's mental health and becomes even more of a burden on the taxpayer. But if you thought that entering a nursing home was a solution, people entering into nursing homes from 1 November will also be subject to these new charges. 30% of pensioners, 75% of part pensioners, and all self-funded retirees will pay the non-clinical care contribution for things such as bathing, mobility assistance, and lifestyle activities capped at $100 per day. These funds will be deducted from the RAD payment, which is the refundable accommodation deposit that is paid when entering the home and is normally returned to the families once loved ones pass on. Providers will now be able to keep 2% of the RAD per year or a maximum of 10% over 5 years. With some RAD being in the vicinity of $750,000, this has serious consequences for those requiring care. It's opened all sorts of mismanagement. When pressed, the government replied that there would be financial hardship assistance made available to those who require it. But didn't you just means test everybody going into this program? So don't you already know everybody's financial position? It just seems fraught with idiocy once again. To put this simply, this is discrimination against the age. Again, simple as that. People that have worked hard, paid taxes all their lives, are now being targeted by the government to help pay down debt that the government has incurred or pay for shiny new toys like net zero. If you think this government's got your best interests at heart, think again. Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks, everyone. See you later.